Judy, I'm curious. Your kids, your two boys, did you notice a difference between the two of them growing up? What were some of the big differences you noticed?
Um, the, the, the two boys were 27 months apart. So Jeff was born in June, and 2 years later, at the end of August, Doug was born. Um, he was supposed to come in September, but couldn't wait, so was born at the end of August. Um, that I have, as I've said before, I had very little experience with babies, so I learned a lot. But what I also learned is that every baby has his own unique character. And so Jeff would would stay up late and sleep in. Doug would wake up early and go to sleep in the middle of a story that was being read. So um, while a mom learns to take care of children, everybody is different, and so I'm sure if I had 7 children, I would say the same thing, that there were always differences. Though I guess if I had 7 children, the oldest would be taking care of some of the younger ones, but I didn't have that. It was interesting. Jeff didn't start to walk until he was 14 months old. He was content to play with things, but then when he started walking, he ran. He loved to climb, and so when Doug started to walk when he was 1 year old, we had a birthday party for him. Both sets of grandparents were there, and he took his first steps in front of the grandparents. A political move, if ever there was. And he then tried to do everything that Jeff was doing. If Jeff was climbing, Doug was climbing right behind him. And so I learned to teach my sons to hold on tight, because it was important that they be safe. I knew if I wasn't there, they were going to start climbing, and so I taught them to hold on tight. Once we were in a neighborhood when the boys were like 3 and 5 or 2 and 4, and Jeff was climbing up in a tree, and another mother came to me and she gave me the riot act. How could I let him do that? And I realized she was scared stiff of letting her kid get up in a tree, and so she felt like I was not being responsible. I was setting a bad example, I think, was the idea. But maybe because I'd grown up climbing in trees with my older brother, who was 5 years older, and I just knew it's something you can do for free, but you have to do it carefully. So I had climbers for kids. Initially, I think Doug was more attracted to a ball. He liked sports more, the younger one. And Jeff played baseball. Well, we were in Moorhead, and he got there, and he started baseball when they were starting to have the kids pitch. He was out in center field. They had double headers in this 90-degree heat, and nobody could ever hit it out to the field except the one or two times in a whole game when Jeff was looking elsewhere. And so he didn't play baseball the next summer, and I understood why. They both played basketball. Doug played baseball. But Jeff got interested in soccer and really loved soccer. So played soccer in high school, some in college, and then when he was in medical school, he was in a nighttime indoor league that gave him a chance to run off his energy and frustrations. So that he really enjoyed that. Doug ended up working for the Minnesota Conservation Corps, taking youth teams to work in state parks, and he loved being in the outdoors and gained many skills with that. As you know, the staff got trained. We had camped some, but never like the Bowen Baileys have ended up doing. But it was working out in the state parks that got him doing that, as well as learning to sign because there were deaf workers working with him. So, but Jeff also liked to camp, and when I went to see him in Africa, we camped. We hitchhiked and had the tent, and we camped, and then we rented a car part of the time, but we're outdoors and exploring. So, in different places with different experiences, they've both enjoyed the outdoors. Both.
I'm just curious. The food, did they eat ordinary food, or did you have to make specific things for them? Did they eat the same kind of food? Just curious, the food that you fed them, did you have to cook two different things or two different meals? Or did they kind of eat the same stuff?
I don't remember so much difference in what they ate. I mean, I roasted chickens. We made hamburgers. Doug has now become a vegetarian mostly. Jeff learned. He was in Liberia first, and then in Botswana, so learned to eat there. I remember Doug having spent a semester in Zimbabwe and had cornmeal mush for breakfast every day. And when he came home, one of his questions was, why do we need 64 varieties of ice cream? You know, when you've eaten really simply for 6 months, you wonder why all the varieties that Americans seem to need. So now, both of them, Doug, as I said, is more vegetarian. Jeff eats a variety of things, but I haven't been to Massachusetts since Thanksgiving, so I don't know what the trend is right now. It's different to not be able to be traveling as we have been fortunate to be able to do. So.
Yeah. It must be difficult with what's going on, not being able to travel and visit your kids.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Doug had been doing some for work before COVID, and now I think Zoom's every place like other people, and that's true for Jeff. Was commuting from Massachusetts down to Providence for his lab, but now is having to do all things remotely. So these are times when we've all learned to realize we've taken things for granted that were not privileges other people had.
Did your kids both go to the same schools?
As young kids, or just all the way through, up through.
Like from when they started school up to high school. What did both do? Did they go to the same schools, or what schools did they go to?
Jeff up liking science very much. He wasn't very diligent about school. I mean, he did fine in school, but never brought anything home. But when he was in high school, he had a biology teacher that really inspired him. He was studying how to spell all these Latin words, so we knew that was taking hold. And then he took a second year biology course and ended up studying biology in college. Um, and with his biology major, didn't know what he would do, so he went into the Peace Corps for a couple years. And came back saying either he was going to be a science teacher, because he taught science in, well, first Liberia for a few months before the Civil War broke out, and they got brought back home, but then went to Botswana, taught science there, and came back saying, I'm going to be a science teacher or a doctor. And I about fell over. Because all I could think of was when his dad started teaching at the seminary, and we had students at the house, they were calling him Dr. Bailey, and Jeff was 3. He came into the kitchen and said, Mom, why are they calling Dad doctor? He's not a real doctor. Because a real doctor pokes on your tummy, I think. But at any rate, but that's what he ended up doing then. He went into medicine and has done research on the Human Genome Project. So I understand very little about what he does.